person living where they were not born. Immigrant, a brown person living where they were not born. Black on black crime, the scourge of black communities, proof of how innately violent and dangerous we are, used by white people to somehow justify the violence they do to us. White on white crime, a never used phrase applicable to Jack the Ripper, both world wars, the mob, Fred West, Ted Bundy, the IRA, the war in Ukraine, and the majority of all crime in white countries. For other non-existent phrases, see Chinese on Chinese, Indian on Indian crime. Expat community, jolly bars and clubs separate from the natives with English speakers who comfort and remind one of home. Immigrant community, a ghetto where brown foreign people refuse to integrate and dare to speak their own language. A group of white boys, Jim, Clyde and Biff. A group of black boys, a gang, trouble, stop and search. A gaff, a term reserved exclusively for rich white men who publicly display they're unfit to do their job. Jokes, there's no counterpart, no one else gets these. World
Peace, 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 peace. Greetings. It's good to see you again. And I wanted to start with that video because when I saw it, language is so coded. And sometimes it's great because you're speaking to your community, your friends, your family. And so there's an understanding of things that only you all have. So that's wonderful. Sometimes it's discussions with your friends. So it's like inside jokes. So that's wonderful. But there's also, of course, coded racism in language. Um, some of it is not so coded or hidden, it is very blatant. And so I thought about, I had seen the first video that I showed, um, I'd seen it some time ago, and it goes on. It discusses a lot of other things. And even though the sister who posted it is a comedian, she's telling the truth, which comedians often do. The good ones always do. Um, but I wanted to talk about in this playlist of returning, of going to Ghana, of making a home in Ghana, to talk about those terms, to talk about the terms expat, immigrant, repat, and refugee. So the discussion that she shared is, I'm sure, the views and the truth of many Africans of various descent living in Britain. And it's true around the world. It shifts a little when you're talking about Africans throughout the diaspora and African Americans um, looking to leave the US. Even in the discussion of going to Ghana or Thailand or Kenya or Tanzania or other places that friends of mine have discussed and or moved to, there's always the discussion to not isolate ourselves, to not go into a community and make it so that we have dropped into this little space and we are not having interactions with the people who live there. Because then what's the point of being there? Of course, there's a great comfort in being with people who understand your shorthand of your experience or your uh, thoughts or your slang or whatever have you. Um, a sister who I know who's living in Thailand said she feels like Thailand is little Atlanta. And I was like, that's cool. And the fact that these Africans get to be in Thailand. Um, so there is the caution to not become an expat community that is so insulated that they are not connecting to the people in the country that they are so blessed to be in, to experience culture in a country that is dependent on the people around you or would not exist. But I know there's another layer for us when we leave. So there is, of course, the care to not do that. And it's very clear that uh, expat is often used to mean um, we got money, while immigrants are supposed to not. Which is also interesting because there are quote unquote immigrants who come to the United States, especially if they are Black and brown, who may come with more money than people in the United States actually have, but are still regarded as immigrants because they are not European. So I was thinking about all those things and I thought about it was really interesting A few months ago, there was a discussion about citizenship in Ghana. So, of course, Ghana has opened its arms wide. Ghana has done. There's two sides to everything. So, Ghana's one of its main sources of income is tourism, and has been for a while. But then when they did the year of the return, it like blew it wide open. And then people came back to Ghana or went to Ghana. Uh, Set up homes, invested in the land, bought property, built businesses, formed communities. And unfortunately, because uh, capitalism is king, especially here in the US, some of us have gone to Ghana with a very capitalistic mindset. I can be king with money back got, but it's not everybody. Some people have gone back to Ghana. I say back because for us as Africans, we're looking to return um, to the soil. Uh, and especially if we're African Americans and we do not know, within a couple generations where our families are from. I've been fortunate to do my genetic ancestry, so I know where it says my families are from, and I also realize that it could be people who migrated. It could be uh, people who are in a location that is now listed as this particular country. Not to say that it's not valid information, but there are other things that feed into that. So, back to this discussion, a few months ago, there was, because Ghana has been so welcoming, and in addition, I give Ghana its props for spearheading the work with the UN to make sure that the transatlantic slave trade, the Ma'afa, the Great Horror, was recognized as a crime against humanity. And for it's a wonderful thing to have finally established and spoken out loud on a national stage. So I'm very appreciative. And also because Ghana uh, is enriched by people coming to Ghana and setting up and investing, there are sometimes things that are not the best decisions. And so a few months ago, the citizenship that people were so eager to get, I remember when the sister friend of mine that I told you all about, when she received her Ghanaian citizenship, it was a big group of people who received it. They were all delighted. We were seeing pictures and posts everywhere of their having their citizenship. Um, the professor that I talked to you about before, he was in that, and he's been back and forth to Ghana for years, at least 20 years, and he was in that same group of people. And then there were also large groups of Europeans uh, who came through, and I'll tell you why I mentioned that in just a second. And other people who were not people of African descent who were returning to the continent or coming home. So I say that to say that uh, when the citizenship discussion came up recently, I don't know when you're going to see this video, but came up recently, the criteria had changed. And the criteria had changed so markedly that it was painful for people. Not just that it was financially painful, it felt like it was painful for people who were living there, according to my sister friend, and it was painful for people who were here who are trying to figure out, or wherever here is, not in Ghana, who are trying to figure out, well, how am I going to establish citizenship there now? For many of us, we've purchased land or we have relationships there. And you know, for some of us, the goal is citizenship because even though America is home, it's not it's not always the home you want to be in. So it's like it's a dysfunctional home. Uh, so it's your place of origin, but it's not kind. So um, here's a couple things that came up. The citizenship debate was discussion, however you want to name it, was difficult because there are people who are in Ghana on fixed incomes. They've retired. They've decided this is where they would like to be at ease mentally, physically. The amount of trauma that exists on a daily basis when you are in any place, not just here in the US, that systemically dismisses and dehumanizes you is rough. It's rough isn't even the word, but it's in your bones, it's in your skin. It's a daily work to not be affected, and you're still affected, but to seek your energy and your source from something other than that. So the one of the largest changes that happened was the initial cost uh, in recent years for citizenship was about 400, I think $400 American, and the price had skyrocketed to 2,600 American dollars with another, I can't remember if it was 1,500 CDs or 1,500 American dollars on top of that. So it had already tripled, like, I mean, six times the amount was being asked. So here were the other criteria that were being asked: a completed application form, a birth certificate, a bio data page of a valid passport, proof of legal residence, 2 years, police clearance, and criminal records from your country of origin and Ghana. So they wanted background checks, evidence of strong ties to Ghana, proof of DNA to support Ghanaian descent, uh, and then that costly citizenship application. So, on the one side, I'm going, I understand when a country wants to make sure they know who's coming into their country. I can do it. What was difficult was no one is applying for citizenship on their own. Everyone is not coming to Ghana looking like, I can't remember the duck. Scrooge McDuck. Everyone's not coming with their pockets full of gold chips just falling over. Some people have saved and they are making their way to fulfill a dream, to fulfill a vision, to fulfill a goal, uh, completing their journey, and they are living modestly in order to move and to enjoy that peace settling into their bones, into their skin, into their mind, into their spirit. Um, so the other thing was for people to have given so much time, energy, money in Ghana, and then to feel like they were being excluded from the path of citizenship was painful. In addition, for many of us watching, these birds are having a good time. For many of us watching Ghana, and many places around the world, uh, there are places where celebrity trumps that whole process, where different ethnicities are not held to the same standard, where money overall, it's almost like a pay to play thing.
What's your take?
Expat is a racist as hell term.
100% disagree. It doesn't strike. Who's an expat?
It's somebody that comes to another country, gets paid more for having less skill, and then when you and me go to their country, we're called immigrants.
Oh, this is really interesting. Wait, so if you come from like a rich country, I suppose,
Yeah.
and you go to a poorer country, you become an expat.
Yeah.
But if you come from a poorer country and you go to a richer country,
You are an immigrant.
that is, expats are immigrants.
Colonialism 101.
All right, 100%, I 100% agree. Expat is racist.
So I thought about all of this when I was thinking about this discussion of expat versus immigrant. Initially, expat versus immigrant. But I also realized that for many of us in the diaspora, when we return to the continent, we are calling ourselves repats, repatriating. We're returning to our motherland, even if we are not sure exactly where on the motherland our ancestors are from. But repats is another term. And then it made me think about years ago when the levees were blown up um, in New Orleans. I was sitting in an airport. Now, I don't remember where I was going. I wish I could. And I'm sure it's in a journal. But I was sitting in an airport watching as Black people were floating in whatever they could float in, or sitting on their roofs, trying to not drown, trying to stay alive, waiting to be rescued. And how many of these people who are citizens of the United States, raised and born and bred in NOLA, were being called refugees. Refugees. which is coded on its own. So, so there's a picture that is fed to all of us when you say expat, immigrant, refugee, and the picture changes on class lines, race lines, uh, all of these things. There's a status to each one. But I did want to look at what the meaning of refugee is. And as I stated in the other video about moving to Ghana, that there are so many, Q-Tip has the line, well, Daddy, don't you know that things go in cycles? There are patterns of us looking for our sanity and our wellness, not in the United States. Even knowing that for those of us who live in the US, there is a culture, there's an African American culture, and it's a comfortable thing to find when we find it anywhere that we go. Um, and to see how African American culture affects everywhere in the world is appropriated, is remixed, is so highly valuable everywhere in the world, but that the people who often create that culture. So I thought about the word refugees, and this is the definition. Refugees are individuals forced to flee their home country due to the persecution, war, or violence, often based on race, religion, nationality, or political opponents. And so, what that would make many of us who leave the US are refugees. Um, but it looks bad on the country that says they're the best in the world, uh, that says they're the richest in the world. None of these things, which are true, uh, for the people leaving your country to seek refuge somewhere else, which is simply what it is, seeking refuge somewhere else, looking for peace, home, regulation of your nervous system, the chance to grow up without, to grow up and get old and to truly just get old without inflammation shutting down different parts of your body, taking your memory, taking your health, harming your bones, all the things that happen with the underlying hum of stress that exist in places where there are systemic things set up against your well-being. So I think this is a really interesting discussion to look at because there are things that sometimes we just accept without thinking about them. You know, even as the subway tapes have started, um, that Kareem was like, "Wow, 100% disagree," and I know that's part of the thing. Um, and then to be able to talk about it, but also to look at the fact that there is languaging that we continue to create for ourselves. There are different meanings that happen based on different experiences. That repatriation is such a beautiful and creating community is so necessary. So even as if you are watching these videos, it is likely because you have made these plans and you are either walking the same journey I'm or you've already walked it. Um, but you know, just to be aware of the messaging that you're being fed, that you may be propagating as you share it or spread it or use the different words, and that as we engage in the privilege of travel, in the privilege of travel, because I know there are children that I used to teach who had never been off of their block and they were 12. They had never been out of their particular city. They had not been to the fair that was 20 minutes away. So when we go through the privilege of traveling, of being blessed to be able to experience someone else's culture, uh, of being blessed to be able to see ourselves in other places in the world, to be able to see that there are more similarities than differences, to be able to experience just the richness of humanity, that we are careful not to denigrate or put anyone else down, because unfortunately that is a practice here in the U.S. that you are elevated if you can stand on someone else. And I believe it was Toni Morrison or Nikki Giovanni or both who asked them, "What are you really if your elevation or your esteem comes at the cost of someone else's?" So, you know, be aware, be excited, move on your way. Holla at me in the comments. Keep watching. Share with me where you are in your journey or what you'd already done. But yeah, be careful not to carry an enemy within. If the goal is to shake off the shackles of that thought and of the weight of it, to not carry it with you when you leave, and to do steady work to unburden yourself so that you can truly live the blessed life you're headed toward. So this is Reverend Akofo Mwalimu Yogi, Sister Mama Adi saying peace. I'll see you next time.